So far away, Lucas, who is your favourite bald character on Breaking Bad?
You can't ask that question. They're all fucking bald.
Exactly. So which is your favourite bald character?
Oh, I don't know.
It's like, that's the thing, they're all so good. Not since the days of Prison Break has a show featured so many crime-committing bald characters as Breaking Bad. See, there's a reason I asked that, Lucas. Of the many, many aerodynamic characters to appear on the show, one of the most popular is Mike Ehrmantraut, a hyper-competent crime connoisseur responsible for more ass-whoopings than an abusive donkey farmer. A character who exists in part because the actor playing him slapped Aaron Paul right across the face. So what do you know about Jonathan Banks, Lucas, the actor who plays Mike Ehrmantraut? Because he is a journeyman actor who's been working for like 50 years at this point.
Oh, right, fair enough. I know him from, I guess, like a couple of more recent roles of like Breaking Bad, and he's in like Community for a while as well.
Yeah, he's a great character actor, isn't he? He's got a very distinct look, to put it diplomatically, and I think he's aware of that. He's aware of the way he looks. He knows he's not going to be a leading man. But he's got that like Steve Buscemi energy about him, where it's like, well, I'm never going to be a leading man, but they're never going to be able to cast anybody who looks like me. If they want to cast Steve Buscemi, they cast Steve Buscemi. So I'm going to get work that way. And that's one of the things Jonathan Banks was famous for. Like he was just a character actor, usually playing either criminals, police officers, or criminal police officers.
He's very good at that one thing.
And then it comes to a head in Breaking Bad, where he plays a former police officer turned criminal. And are you aware of the his earliest, most infamous role?
No, I don't think I am.
Well, that is where he appeared in a sex ed commercial when he was like 16, I think, but he still somehow looks both 14 and 40 at the same time. If you scroll down, you can just have a quick look at him in that commercial.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, that's him at like 16 years old.
I don't think I've ever seen him with hair.
Yeah, he looks weird with hair. In that sex ed infomercial, he bizarrely and now infamously claims that a girl being on her period makes her better at bowling.
Wait, what?
Because it was one of those like weirdo abstinence ones. The other one like, never have sex. Having sex is a terrible thing. And it appeared in like an episode of John Oliver, where he got Jonathan Banks back in like current Breaking Bad Jonathan Banks form, where he's just all old and not giving a fuck. And he's like, if any idiot ever tells you that being on the period makes a girl better at bowling, they're a fucking idiot.
Like, what was the advert? Like, don't take her on a date bowling while she's got a period. Like,
do you know those like weird things they used to show in schools that I like never had? Like those abstinence only ones. It's one of those weirdo things that they showed in some American schools, and you just happen to be one of the actors they got for it.
There's a lot of, like, you know, actors that I've heard have started out with a weird advert of, like, you know, some random cereal or some fucking lubrication or something like that. But, like, this is maybe the weirdest one I've heard of.
Yeah, there's a couple of those, like, great early acting roles. It's like the film Mac and Me has Jennifer Aniston's first ever role in it, where she's in the background of the infamous McDonald's dance scene. And then you've got, like, people like Karl Urban. One of his earliest roles was on Xena Warrior Princess, but do you know who else's one of the earliest roles was on that show?
I did see this. Starr was on it as well.
Yeah, a little shit-eating grin Anthony Starr. He's like a little angry kid. He's like, argh! Getting it back to Jonathan Banks, though, he was never really considered leading man material. His commanding presence and just that voice, that fucking Jonathan Banks voice, saw him working steadily for about 50 straight years. And it's because of these like journeyman acting roles in which he didn't play a key role, but one that was very memorable, that actually saw him being cast on Breaking Bad. So I'm guessing you don't have Jonathan Banks' IMDb page commit to memory?
No, I certainly don't.
Unfortunately, I've got a screenshot of it in front of me now, so I'd have to pretend to know that. I can just say that he played a character called Frank McPike on a show called Wiseguy. And there'll be a picture of him behind me and a clip of Jonathan Banks as Frank McPike in Wiseguy for people to look at now and see, wow, he does look weird with hair.
They got hooked up to 28 machines and tubes, and I gotta be there. I need a few days, and I don't give a damn what you say. What if it was your mother? Wouldn't you want to be with her if she needed you?
Whoa. I just said go ahead.
What I should point out, folks at home, is that in that show, Jonathan Banks is supposed to be playing a heroic character. despite looking like a lawyer who defends athletes who specifically kick dogs. And the story goes that Vince Gilligan, one of the creators of Breaking Bad, was a huge fan of Wiseguy, and in particular, a fan of Banks' role on it. And he made a mental note that if he had a chance, he'd want to work with him. And I think that just shows how good an actor Banks is and how much presence he has, that he was still memorable all those years later. And the same thing happened, we talked about in an early video, with Bryan Cranston. I mentioned The X-Files. One of Cranston's earliest dramatic roles was on The X-Files, where he plays a neo-Nazi whose head explodes. And that episode, I think, was either written or directed, or maybe written and directed by Vince Gilligan. And Vince Gilligan made, a mental note of, this guy's a fucking fantastic actor. He can play, an outwardly evil, unsympathetic character in a sympathetic way. And that's what made him think he'd be perfect for Walter White. And when he said, oh, well, Bryan Cranston could play Walter White, and the people from the network were like, the Malcolm in the Middle guy, Vince Gilligan went, yeah, I know that's how you know him, but I worked with him a few years ago. Watch this episode of X-Files that I wrote. You'll see what I mean. And they watched it and went, he's great, get him. And that's the thing of, that was Vince Gilligan just being one of those weirdo nerds who watches a shit ton of TV. And he was aware of all the other things that Cranston had done. And you always get that, don't you, with superhero media is the most common avenue for it, where it's an actor gets cast in a superhero role, a bunch of weird nerds online complain like they'll never be able to play this character. They absolutely knock it out of the park, and the nerds are like, well, I never said out. So you had Heath Ledger as the Joker? What, the gay cowboy? So, well, that's one of the roles he's done, but he's also done 50 other roles, all of which are incredible. I think he can play a clown who shoots people. Or like Robert Pattinson as Batman, and we had that all over again. And the reason I like this is because it's almost like the Dunning-Kruger effect for media, where those weird nerds only know Robert Pattinson from Twilight, so they assume that's the only other role other people know him for, even though Robert Pattinson was doing 3 indie movies a year for 10 years straight, all of which were phenomenally well received.
Yeah, it's hilarious, just people still acting like his last movie role was Twilight, and it's like, have you seen how good he's been in movies recently? Dear God.
Have you seen how good he was in Batman?
Yeah.
Because a little tidbit I learned, and I was researching something about Batman, because I recently watched it. I missed it when it was in the cinema for obvious reasons, but I was oh, is there something I can do about Batman? We can maybe do a video about it. I never found a tidbit interesting enough to spin off into a full video, but I did find one interesting thing about the suit. Robert Pattinson was very involved with the suit making process for Batman, and the first thing he did when they put the costume on was do backflips. And between takes, he'd stand there dressed as Batman doing backflips. And when they asked him, why are you doing backflips? He said, because I can. And bringing it back to Jonathan Banks, as mentioned, Vince Gilligan was very keen to work with him, but didn't really have an opportunity to, right up until Bob Odenkirk had to drop out of filming for a couple of days.
Oh, okay.
So the story here is Bob Odenkirk had committed to, I think, 3 or 4 episodes, but had to drop out at the last minute for one. And they had to find a replacement for his character. And the scene in which Bob Odenkirk's character, Sol, was supposed to appear was the one in which Jesse's girlfriend has overdosed. Do you know that scene where he's just sat there inconsolable on the floor? And that was supposed to be Bob Odenkirk was going to turn up and then walk him through the process of here's what you do, here's what you say. When the police turn up, because they will turn up, you call me, I'll sort it out. And Bob Odenkirk wasn't there that day, so I thought, well, we need a guy in. So they created the character of Mike the Cleaner, who was going to be Sol's odd job man. And that's when Gilligan thought, well, I'll get in Jonathan Banks for that. He's great. So they brought Banks in to audition alongside a bunch of other guys. And the story goes that they had Aaron Paul sat on the floor in his catatonic state. And they told Banks to go up and say, okay, here's the scene, go. And Banks walked up and just slapped Aaron Paul across the face. And when he looked up, what the hell are you doing? Then he started his lines. Like he does in the show, where he walks up and Aaron Paul will not sit up, so he just slaps him and starts telling him what for.
Yeah, he's just come on, get the fuck up, sort your shit out.
And when Gilligan asked him, okay, that was great, but what was the slap for? Well, that's what Mike would do, right? This guy's no nonsense. He's not there to dick around. He can't have someone in that state because it's going to cause a problem. And Gilligan said, you know what, that's good. So he took that and wrote it into the script that Mike slapped Aaron Paul. Mike slapped Jesse, and Aaron Paul was apparently super annoyed about it.
Say it, please. I woke up, I found her, that's all I know. Say it. I woke up, I found her, that's all I know.
It actually would be, but it does make for a great scene because like that scene is so memorable. And just with your Mike, just it sells you as like the no nonsense. I'm gonna get shit sorted out, doesn't it? Just like, come on, you do this, 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 and this. Are you listening? Are you listening? Come on.
It says a lot about just the actor himself that he's like got that idea of like the character so down of like, I know that right now if you're gonna dick me about, I would just slap you.
Yeah, and it's not even hard, just like, to shock him, to wake him up. So he's telling him, and like all the speeches that Mike gives throughout that season were directly informed by Banks' performance of Gilligan being like, well, we need to put this guy in more episodes. Like, this guy's amazing, we need to put him in more episodes. So the character of Mike, which is supposed to be like a one-shot deal, just to give Gilligan a chance to work with Banks, ended up being like, this entire character that goes all the way to like, the end of it, and now he's in Better Call Saul, also kicking so much fucking ass.
It's so bizarre to me that just moments like that happen where if it weren't for the fact that like Bob Odenkirk couldn't show up, not just he didn't ghost them, but like the fact that he couldn't, be scheduled in that day just means that an entire character was born out of it, essentially.
Yeah, and Breaking Bad is one of those shows where it's really hard to believe that, but it happens so much because Breaking Bad seems like it's so well written. Like, it feels like it was like built from the ground up and that everything was planned out because there are so many like Easter eggs and Chekhov's guns throughout the seasons. And it turns out like they wrote them on the fly for the most part, and a lot of characters, their entire backstory and motivations were changed on a whim based on the performance of actors. The famous one is that Jesse Pinkman was supposed to die in season 1. But Aaron Paul's chemistry with Bryan Cranston was so strong, they decided against that. Same thing for like Bob Odenkirk. Where his presence on screen was really great, so they wrote more roles for him. Same thing with Jonathan Banks, and we did another video about Giancarlo Esposito, where he was only supposed to come in for one episode, but he played his character like a villain. Audience members picked up on that, and they started making fan theories, which the creators liked, so they brought him back for more and more, and he managed to wangle that into getting the villain role for the next season. And it was all just done on the fly.
I can't imagine a Breaking Bad where, like, Saul, Mike, Jesse, and Gus are all minor characters.
That's the thing, imagine a Breaking Bad without Jesse past season 1. Imagine a Breaking Bad without Mike. And they feel like characters that were in the show from the start, but they weren't, and they were, like, largely informed by the actors being so good. And the fact that like Breaking Bad was basically just written on a whim and changed willy-nilly based on how the director felt that day, but it still feels so cohesive and well-built and grounded, is incredible. And it just shows the talent of the people working on it.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it goes to show the strength of leaning into what's working and being able to have that flexibility on a show or a project,
And just as well, playing to your actor's strengths, which apparently included just slapping Aaron Paul across the face. If anyone curious, Aaron Paul did not like that moment and still complains about it to this day, to which Jonathan Banks usually responds by lightly slapping him over the face. I love that the actors behind the scenes have fun. Faraway Lucas, today's video has been about actors who nailed minor roles. So is there any minor roles in your head that actors just fucking nailed to the point where you think, oh man, I wish they got the Mike treatment and got expanded upon?
Well, there's actually one character that I alluded to earlier. There's a really good side character, and that's Jonathan Banks in Community.
Okay, so I've not seen Community. What does he do in that?
So he's just like, I think he might be an ex-cop.
Okay, that's how he plays that, because he just has that look about him, doesn't he? Because he's very and he's got that look that when he stares you down, it's like he's looking right through you.
He's like a criminology teacher.
That's a great role for Mike. For Jonathan Banks, just say.
For Mike, yeah. And it's just fantastic of just like the different scenes he has with the different characters of like, Jeff becomes like a teacher and he's basically there like the jaded teacher that's like, oh yeah, I think like Jeff's first line to him was like, oh yeah, this is just a temporary thing. I'm not going to be teaching here for very long. And he's like, yeah, me too. Like, okay, how long have you been here? He's like, 20 years. Sit down.
That's such a... Oh, God, that's so good. And I think I can picture that perfectly in my head. For me, I'm going to go to the realm of video games, and I'm going to say Senator Armstrong in Revengeance.
Okay.
Because, he's so iconic now because of all the memes. He is in the game for 10 minutes. He is the final boss. He has one appearance in a cutscene early in the game. You don't see him again until the end of the game, where he gives like his big villain speech and you beat him up. And I think that it's a crime that we did not get him being the Virgil of that game. By which I mean, you fight him multiple times and he kicks your ass each time as Raiden gets stronger. Just imagine how much more cathartic that final fight would be. Because they kind of have to put the entirety of that like trope into the final fight, where he kicks your ass twice and you beat him at the last minute. I feel like that would have been stronger if it was stretched out over the entire game. So when you get to the end of the game, like, oh, I'm going to kick his fucking ass this time. And also as well, I love the fact that he doesn't even get a name. Even though he is named in the game, it's Stephen Armstrong. But like when you fight, it just says Senator at the bottom. That's a reference to old video games where it just says boss.
Oh, right, yeah.
And that's so I guess it works in that, but I would love to see more of that character. For my next example, I'm going to go a little bit off track here. I'm going to say the T-Rex in the Jurassic World series. Because in Jurassic Park, the T-Rex is fucking rad. And
I mean, yeah.
And to the point where the final bit, Joey kills all the raptors, that was going to be the end of the film, just going to be the raptors. And Steven Spielberg was like, hang on, are we not bringing back the T-Rex? And they went, well, Steven, you're Steven Spielberg, we can bring back the T-Rex. Everyone's like, oh, fucking bring back the T-Rex. So they bring back the T-Rex, and you get that rad thing of it screaming, and it's just like when dinosaurs ruled the earth. And they keep trying to recreate that moment in the World Series, and it never works because they don't give the T-Rex enough play. Right? And they keep trying to recreate that moment, but not doing the build-up that resulted in that moment being so iconic. Was there any like that for you, of like non-human characters you wish got more play?
Non-human characters?
Yeah, the same as like dinosaur, like, an animal sidekick, or just like, a pet that character has, or something like that.
I kind of wish we had more baby Groot rather than teenage Groot.
Yeah, because teenage Groot is really fucking annoying. And it's like, I get the joke they're trying to make each time with teenage Groot. Oh, he's a teenager, he doesn't care. It's like, but how does he go from being a baby to a teenager in one movie? But now it's been 3 movies and being a teenager.
And like, the joke is just so one note of like,
At least baby Groot's cute.
Yeah.
That's the thing, baby Groot's like, in that same way as like baby Yoda, even when the character annoys you, at least it's cute. Whereas teenage Groot is just a fucking arsehole. He's like, Groot, do something. No. Why do they even bother taking Groot on missions when like, because at least baby Groot helps. Doesn't listen very much, but it helps. But, like, teenage Groot is constant, like, what's it like, Thor's like dying, he's getting melted by a star. And just like Groot's there of like, looks up from its Game Boy and it's like, I guess I should help, I guess. It's like, this is the only thing that can save the universe and you're just watching it melt.
But like, you contrast that to like the scene in Guardians 2 where they're trying to like get baby Groot to break him out.
Yeah.
And it's like they keep going back and forth and it's like a fun entire scene of like baby Groot not quite understanding and just coming back with like a fucking toe.